So now, like, two questions for you. Like, the first one, obviously you're always riding. You see a ton of people within the industry or just bike fans on the trail. What are like some common mistakes that you see people making on their bike or equipment that negatively affect their experience of mountain biking?
The one I see the most is sag, like people not running the correct balanced suspension. And that just, like we talked about before, just me sitting on your bike, it changes the pitch of the bike. It changes the handling. It changes your weight bias on the bike. So that, number one, is to check the sag. And the same kind of goes for the tires. Like they're maybe more apparent and less of a factor in terms of the balance and stuff. Like you kind of know when they're off, but I know a lot of people that just use a shitty floor pump and then go to their friend's shitty floor pump, and you'd be surprised the extra traction you get if you are 4 psi higher versus 4 psi lower. So yeah, I think some basic setups like that and routine checks are worthwhile. The other one, is probably the handlebar position, just like extreme far forward or extremely too far back. And everybody has their preferences, but I think there's, sort of like, like a bell curve where everybody should be within. Yeah. And that can be dictated by the style or the angles of the bike too. Because I found my preferences can sometimes change depending on the bike. So other than that, I don't know what else.
I think overall, like to like bounce on what you just said, it's like mountain biking is a mechanical sport.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important to take a bit of time to understand how the bike works, how the suspension works, what setting does what, like without being super necessarily like super scientific about it, but just understanding what your rebound does, what your compression does, what the air pressure does. So when you go about setting the bike and you have complaint about your bike and you're like, oh, my bike feels like it's bucking me over the bar. Like I feel like it's too bouncy. Like you know what to adjust because you have like a basic understanding of what does what.
There's some good apps for that now.
Yeah, there's apps. I mean, internet's got. Yeah, I'm sure you could ask ChatGPT.
I mean, even like the suspension manuals, as rudimentary as they are, they're a great starting point.
Yeah,
and if nothing else, you'll end up with like a balanced and comfortable and predictable ride. It might not be ideal, but it's something to build off of. And yeah, I mean, like we're talking about moto, we're talking about road bikes. Like the road bike is so much less dynamic, and I'll probably get some flack from road bikers, but the bike itself, like the position between the axles and your contact points, your hands and your feet and your saddle, those don't move in relation to the axles. And then a moto, like it's so much heavier. It's one size. There are fewer things to tweak on it. So I'd even argue, I mean, motor aside, I think I would even argue that, a mountain bike is more complex to set up.
Yeah. And I feel like motos is fairly easy in a way because, like, for example, KTM's got mostly like one chassis. There's obviously nuances, but two chassis with, for example, the bike you have. And it's basically, I mean, the shocks are different depending on, if it's a motocross or if it's an enduro bike, but overall it's fairly similar. There is actually most likely the same number of clicks, and there's a base setting. And for example, on the forks, they've got like a comfort setting, which is pretty much their beginner setting. And then they got like a standard, and then they got a sport setting, which is like the more advanced. I think it's a difference of 3 clicks.
Right.
So it's like pretty straightforward. It's like, okay, 15 clicks, it's standard. 12 clicks of compression, it's sport, and 18, it's, comfort.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas mountain biking, like just the air pressure, like it's, I think, the biggest thing, like starting with the right air pressure, and then you can change your volume spacer.
Yeah.
Which is going to change the progressivity of the suspension. It is much more complicated, but definitely worth it to take the time because it can make a huge difference. Like the number of, you just sit in the Whistler Bike Park next to the airline drop, and you hear how many people bottom out on that drop coming into the corner. Sometimes people bottom out twice, like at the landing, and then they bottom out on the corner and on the takeoff of the next jump. And it's like, you'll have such a better time if you take the time to understand how everything works. And also the best way to understand is to try stuff.
Yeah.
And take notes. You try a certain air pressure in your fork and you write it down. Okay, it feels a bit too stiff. Then you remove some. Feels a bit too soft. And so at least you know where you're at. And if you keep track of everything, that makes it much easier to know your baseline and to know what's been working for you and in which case.
Yeah. And I mean, it should also be said that you have to repeat this process in similar conditions on the same track. And, that's testing, that's setting up suspension.
Yeah.
But you can't expect it to bottom out or not bottom out off of this small drop and then go to a huge drop and be like, well, I thought my air pressure was set right. And then, it's not going to work like that. And there's never going to be an ideal setup for all instances, every trail condition. So.
Yeah, it's just trying to find like a base setting, something that works like mostly well everywhere. And obviously you should put the bike at default when in a very extreme situation, when it's, a massive drop or when it's extremely slippery and therefore you go much slower. So you always pretty much have to adapt. But as you understand how things work, usually you can look at a track and have a pretty good idea of what you should change based on the experience.
Yeah, have like a little settings bank or, some notes to go off for sure.